The air was thick with an eerie silence as the group of students opened their eyes. They were no longer in their classroom or anywhere familiar. The ground beneath them was a strange, glowing blue, and the sky above was a swirling mix of colors they had never seen before. Before they could process what was happening, a tall, mysterious figure appeared before them. It was the alien professor. His skin shimmered like liquid silver, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. He didn't speak, but his voice echoed in their minds. "Welcome," he said. "You have 1 hour to build a shelter. If you fail, the consequences will be severe." The students stared at him in shock. 1 hour? Build a shelter? They had no tools, no materials, and no idea where they were. Before they could ask questions, the alien professor vanished, leaving behind a small, glowing timer that began counting down. Panic set in immediately. One student, a young man with a determined look, stepped forward. "We don't have time to argue," he said. "We need to start now." But as they looked around, the reality of their situation sank in. The environment was alien and unforgiving. Strange plants with sharp edges surrounded them, and the ground was uneven and rocky. The air was cold, and a faint hum filled the silence, adding to their unease. The timer continued to tick down. One of the students, a woman with short hair, picked up a rock and examined it. "Maybe we can use these," she said. "But how do we even start?" Another student, a tall man with glasses, shook his head. "This is impossible. We don't even know what we're up against." The group began to argue, their voices rising in frustration. Time was slipping away, and the alien professor's warning hung heavy in the air. As the timer reached 50 minutes, the students finally started moving. They gathered rocks, pulled at the strange plants, and tried to piece together a plan. But with no clear direction and no leader, their efforts were scattered and ineffective. The alien professor watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. The challenge had begun, and the students were already struggling. The students worked frantically, their movements hurried and uncoordinated. The young man who had taken charge earlier was now trying to stack rocks, but they kept slipping and falling. The woman with short hair was pulling at the strange plants, but their sharp edges cut her hands, making her wince in pain. "We need to focus," the young man shouted, his voice tinged with frustration. "If we don't work together, we're not going to make it." "Work together," the tall man with glasses snapped back. "You're not even listening to anyone else's ideas. You think you can do this alone?" The tension in the group was palpable. The timer continued to tick down, now showing only 45 minutes left. The air felt colder, and the faint hum in the background grew louder, adding to their stress. The woman with short hair wiped the blood from her hands and looked around. "We need to stop arguing and think," she said, trying to stay calm. "There has to be a way to use what's around us. Look at these plants, they're tough and flexible. Maybe we can use them to tie the rocks together." The tall man with glasses frowned. "And how do we cut them?" "They're too sharp to handle." "We'll figure it out," she replied firmly. "But we can't just stand here and do nothing." The group reluctantly agreed to try her idea. They started gathering the plants, careful to avoid the sharp edges. The young man used a flat rock to try and cut the plants, but it was slow and difficult work. As they struggled, the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds again. "Time is your greatest enemy," he said. "But your greatest strength lies in unity." The students paused, looking at each other. The message was clear, but putting it into practice was easier said than done. The young man took a deep breath. "All right," he said. "Let's divide the work. You two gather the plants, and I'll start stacking the rocks. We'll figure out how to tie them together once we have enough materials." The group nodded, and for the first time, they began to work as a team. But progress was still slow. The plants were harder to cut than they had anticipated, and the rocks were uneven and difficult to stack. With 35 minutes left on the timer, the students were starting to feel the weight of the challenge. The environment seemed to be working against them, the ground was unstable, and the air was getting colder by the minute. The woman with short hair looked up at the swirling sky. "Why are we even here?" she muttered. "What does this alien professor want from us?" The tall man with glasses adjusted his glasses nervously. "I don't know, but we don't have time to think about that right now. We need to focus on surviving." As they continued to work, a sudden noise made them freeze. It was a low, rumbling sound, like something moving in the distance. The students exchanged worried glances. "What was that?" the young man asked, his voice barely above a whisper. No one had an answer. The sound grew louder, and the ground beneath them seemed to tremble slightly. The students looked around, their fear growing. The alien professor's voice echoed again, this time with a hint of amusement. "The environment is not your only challenge," he said. "Be prepared for the unexpected." The students' hearts raced. They had no idea what was coming, but they knew they had to hurry. The timer now showed 30 minutes left, and their shelter was far from complete. The woman with short hair clenched her fists. "We can't give up," she said. "No matter what happens, we have to keep going." The group nodded, their determination renewed. But as they turned back to their work, the rumbling sound grew louder, and the ground shook more violently. Something was coming. The rumbling grew louder, and the ground beneath the students' feet shook with increasing intensity. They clung to each other, their eyes darting around the alien landscape, searching for the source of the disturbance. "What is that?" the tall man with glasses shouted, his voice trembling. Before anyone could answer, a massive creature emerged from the horizon. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a towering being with multiple legs and a body that shimmered like molten metal. Its eyes glowed a deep red, and it let out a deafening roar that sent chills down their spines. The students froze in fear, but the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds once more. "Do not let fear paralyze you," he said. "Use your surroundings. Adapt and overcome." The young man snapped out of his daze. "He's right. We need to keep working on the shelter. That thing might not even notice us if we stay low and quiet." The woman with short hair nodded, though her hands were shaking. "But we need to work faster. If that thing gets closer, we're done for." The group scrambled back to their tasks, their fear fueling their urgency. The young man continued stacking rocks, while the woman and the tall man focused on cutting and tying the strange plants. As they worked, the alien professor's voice returned, this time with a cryptic message. "Look for what is hidden," he said. "The key to survival lies in the unseen." The students exchanged confused glances. "What does that mean?" the tall man asked, frustration creeping into his voice. The woman paused, her eyes scanning the environment. "Maybe there's something here we're not seeing. Something that can help us." She began searching the ground more carefully, brushing aside the glowing blue soil. After a few moments, she gasped. "Look at this." The others hurried over. Beneath the soil, they found a series of small, glowing crystals embedded in the ground. The crystals pulsed with a soft light, and when the woman touched one, it felt warm to the touch. "What are these?" the young man asked, picking up one of the crystals. "I don't know," the woman replied, "but they might be useful. Maybe we can use them to strengthen the shelter." The tall man adjusted his glasses, studying the crystals closely. "They seem durable, and they're lightweight. If we can figure out how to attach them to the rocks, they might act as a kind of glue or support." The group quickly gathered as many crystals as they could find. The young man experimented with placing one between two rocks, and to their surprise, the crystals seemed to fuse the rocks together, creating a strong bond. "This is amazing," the woman exclaimed. We can use these to make the shelter much sturdier. The students worked faster now, their hope renewed. The crystals made the process of building the shelter much easier, and for the first time, they felt like they might actually succeed. But the creature was still out there, its rumbling growls growing louder as it moved closer. The students could see it more clearly now, its massive legs crushing the ground with each step, its glowing eyes scanning the landscape. "We need to hurry," the young man said, his voice tense. "If that thing sees us, we're finished." The group redoubled their efforts, using the crystals to secure the rocks and plants. The shelter began to take shape, a small, dome-like structure that looked fragile but was surprisingly strong. As they worked, the alien professor's voice returned once more. "Remember," he said, "the challenge is not just about survival. It is about understanding. Look beyond the obvious." The students paused, trying to decipher his words. "What does he mean by that?" the tall man asked, his brow furrowed. The woman shook her head. "I don't know, but we don't have time to think about it right now. We need to finish this shelter before that thing gets here." The timer now showed only 20 minutes remaining. The students worked in silence, their focus entirely on the task at hand. The shelter was nearly complete, but they still needed to reinforce it and make sure it could withstand whatever the alien environment, or the creature, threw at them. As they placed the final crystals, the ground shook violently again. The creature was closer than ever, its massive form casting a shadow over the landscape. The students ducked inside the shelter, their hearts pounding. The structure held, but they could feel the vibrations of the creature's footsteps growing stronger. "Do you think it'll notice us?" the tall man whispered, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," the young man replied, his eyes fixed on the entrance of the shelter. "But we've done all we can. Now we just have to wait." The timer continued to tick down, the numbers glowing ominously in the dim light. The students held their breath, praying that their shelter would be enough to keep them safe. But as the creature's shadow loomed closer, they realized that the challenge was far from over. The creature's shadow loomed over the shelter, its massive legs shaking the ground with every step. The students huddled inside, their breaths shallow and their hearts racing. The shelter, though small and hastily built, held firm against the vibrations, thanks to the glowing crystals that reinforced its structure. For a moment, it seemed like the creature might pass them by. But then, it stopped. The students froze, their eyes wide with fear. The creature's glowing red eyes scanned the area, and its low, rumbling growl sent shivers down their spines. It leaned down, its massive head coming dangerously close to the shelter. The young man clenched his fists, his mind racing. "We can't just sit here," he whispered. "If it finds us, we're done for." The woman with short hair nodded, her face pale but determined. "We need to distract it. Buy ourselves some time." "How?" the tall man with glasses asked, his voice trembling. "We don't even know what that thing is." Before they could come up with a plan, the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds again. "Sometimes, the greatest danger hides the greatest opportunity," he said cryptically. The students exchanged confused glances. "What does that mean?" the tall man muttered. The woman's eyes widened as she looked around the shelter. "Maybe he's saying we need to use the creature to our advantage. But how?" As the creature's massive head loomed closer, the young man noticed something strange. The ground near the creature's feet was glowing faintly, as if something was buried beneath the soil. "Look," he whispered, pointing. "There's something down there. Maybe it's another clue." The woman hesitated. "If we go out there, that thing will see us." "We don't have a choice," the young man said. "If we stay here, we're sitting ducks. We need to take the risk." The tall man shook his head. "This is insane. We'll never make it." But the young man was already moving. He crawled to the entrance of the shelter, his heart pounding. The creature's head was still scanning the area, its glowing eyes casting an eerie light. Taking a deep breath, the young man darted out of the shelter, staying low to the ground. The creature didn't seem to notice him at first, its attention focused elsewhere. The woman and the tall man watched from inside the shelter, their breaths held. "He's crazy," the tall man whispered. "He's brave," the woman replied, her eyes filled with admiration. The young man reached the glowing spot near the creature's feet and began digging frantically. The soil was loose, and he quickly uncovered a small, metallic object. It was a device of some kind, with buttons and a screen that lit up as he touched it. Before he could examine it further, the creature let out a deafening roar. It had noticed him. The young man's heart skipped a beat as the creature's massive head turned toward him. He grabbed the device and sprinted back toward the shelter, the ground shaking beneath his feet. "Hurry!" the woman shouted, her voice filled with panic. The young man dove into the shelter just as the creature's massive leg came crashing down, narrowly missing him. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, but the shelter held. The students huddled together, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The young man held up the device, his hands shaking. "I don't know what this is, but it might be our only hope." The woman took the device and examined it. The screen displayed a series of symbols she didn't recognize, but one button stood out, a large, glowing circle in the center. "What do you think it does?" the tall man asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," the woman replied. "But we're running out of time." The timer now showed only 10 minutes remaining. Outside the shelter, the creature was growing more agitated, its roars growing louder and more frequent. The young man looked at the others. "We have to try it. If we don't do something, that thing will destroy the shelter." The woman nodded, her face set with determination. She pressed the glowing button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the device emitted a low hum, and a beam of light shot out from it, hitting the creature directly. The creature let out a deafening roar, but instead of attacking, it began to change. Its massive form shimmered and shifted, its glowing red eyes fading to a soft blue. The students watched in awe as the creature transformed into a smaller, less threatening form. It looked almost like a large, mechanical dog, its movements calm and deliberate. The alien professor's voice echoed in their minds once more. "You have passed the first test," he said. "But the challenge is not over." The students exchanged confused glances. "First test?" the tall man asked. "What does that mean?" Before they could process the alien professor's words, the ground beneath them began to shift. The shelter started to collapse, the rocks and plants falling apart as the environment changed. The students scrambled to their feet, the device still in their hands. The timer now showed only 5 minutes remaining. "What's happening?" the woman shouted, her voice filled with panic. The young man looked around, his mind racing. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here." As the shelter crumbled around them, the students realized that the challenge was far from over. The alien professor had more surprises in store, and they would need to rely on their wits, and each other, to survive. The ground beneath the students' feet shifted violently, and the shelter they had worked so hard to build collapsed into a pile of rocks and plants. The glowing crystals that had held it together now lay scattered, their light fading. The students stumbled back, their eyes wide with shock. The transformed creature, now a smaller, mechanical dog-like being, stood nearby, its blue eyes watching them calmly. "What's happening?" the tall man with glasses shouted, his voice filled with panic. The young man gripped the strange device tightly, his mind racing. "I don't know, but we need to move. This place is falling apart." The woman with short hair pointed to the timer, which now showed only 4 minutes remaining. "We're running out of time. What do we do now?" Before anyone could answer, the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds once more. "Adaptation is the key to survival," he said. Use what you have learned. The young man looked down at the device in his hands. This thing, it changed the creature. Maybe it can do more. He began pressing buttons on the device, trying to make sense of the symbols on the screen. The woman leaned in, her eyes scanning the display. Look at this, she said, pointing to a symbol that resembled a shield. Maybe it can create some kind of protection. The young man pressed the symbol, and the device emitted a low hum. A faint, glowing barrier appeared around them, shielding them from the collapsing environment. It worked, the tall man exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. But their relief was short-lived. The ground continued to shift, and the air grew colder. The mechanical dog-like creature let out a soft whine, as if warning them of something. The woman looked around, her eyes narrowing. This isn't over. The alien professor said this was just the first test. There's more coming. As if on cue, the environment around them began to change. The swirling sky darkened, and the glowing blue soil turned a deep, ominous red. Strange, jagged structures began to rise from the ground, their surfaces covered in sharp, metallic spikes. The young man tightened his grip on the device. We need to find a way out of here. Fast. The woman nodded, her eyes scanning the area. Look over there, she said, pointing to a faint light in the distance. That might be our way out. The group began moving toward the light, the mechanical creature following close behind. The glowing barrier from the device protected them from the collapsing environment, but it was clear that it wouldn't last forever. As they moved, the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds again. The path to survival is not always clear, he said. But those who persevere will find their way. The tall man groaned. Can't he just tell us what to do instead of giving us riddles? The young man shook his head. He's testing us. We have to figure this out on our own. The group pressed on, their steps hurried but cautious. The jagged structures around them seemed to shift and move, as if alive. The mechanical creature let out a low growl, its eyes fixed on the path ahead. With only 2 minutes left on the timer, the students reached the source of the light. It was a large, circular portal, its surface shimmering like water. Is that a way out? The woman asked, her voice filled with hope. The young man hesitated. I don't know. But it's our only option. The tall man looked back at the collapsing environment. We don't have a choice. We have to go through. The group stepped toward the portal, but as they did, the mechanical creature let out a sharp bark. It stood in front of them, blocking their path. What's it doing? The tall man asked, his voice filled with frustration. The woman knelt down, looking into the creature's glowing blue eyes. I think it's trying to tell us something. The young man examined the device again. Maybe it's not just a shield. Maybe it can do more. He pressed another button, and the device emitted a series of beeps. The mechanical creature's eyes glowed brighter, and it turned toward the portal, stepping through first. The students exchanged glances. I guess we follow it, the young man said. One by one, they stepped through the portal, the glowing barrier from the device disappearing as they did. On the other side, they found themselves in a completely different environment. The ground was smooth and metallic, and the air was warm. Strange, floating orbs of light illuminated the area, casting an eerie glow. The timer on their wrists now showed only 1 minute remaining. The alien professor's voice echoed in their minds once more. You have reached the final stage, he said. But the true challenge lies ahead. The students looked around, their hearts pounding. The mechanical creature stood by their side, its eyes fixed on a large, glowing structure in the distance. What now? The tall man asked, his voice filled with exhaustion. The young man took a deep breath. We finish this. Together. The group moved toward the glowing structure, their steps filled with determination. The final challenge awaited them, and they knew that their survival, and their future, depended on what happened next. The glowing structure loomed ahead, its surface pulsating with a rhythmic light that seemed to match the beating of the students' hearts. The mechanical creature trotted beside them, its blue eyes scanning the area as if on high alert. The timer on their wrists now showed only 45 seconds remaining. "What do you think is inside that thing?" the tall man with glasses asked, his voice shaky. "I don't know," the young man replied, his eyes fixed on the structure. "But we're about to find out." The woman with short hair tightened her grip on the device they had found earlier. "Whatever it is, we need to be ready." The alien professor said this is the final stage. It's not going to be easy. As they approached the structure, a low hum filled the air, growing louder with each step. The ground beneath them vibrated slightly, and the floating orbs of light around them began to move, circling the group like curious spectators. The mechanical creature let out a soft growl, its eyes narrowing. It seemed to sense something the students couldn't. "Stay close," the young man said, his voice firm. "We don't know what we're dealing with here." The group reached the base of the structure, which towered above them like a futuristic monolith. Its surface was smooth and reflective, and as they stepped closer, a doorway appeared, sliding open with a hiss. Inside, the structure was dimly lit, with walls that seemed to shift and change as they moved. The air was thick with tension, and the hum grew louder, almost deafening. The timer now showed only 30 seconds. "We need to hurry," the woman said, her voice urgent. "Whatever the challenge is, we have to face it now." The group stepped inside, the mechanical creature following closely. The doorway slid shut behind them, plunging them into near darkness. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the alien professor's voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome to the final test," he said. "Here, you will face your greatest fear. Overcome it, and you will succeed. Fail, and you will remain here forever." The students exchanged nervous glances. "Our greatest fear," the tall man repeated, his voice trembling. "What does that mean?" Before anyone could answer, the chamber began to change. The walls shifted, and the air grew colder. The students found themselves standing in a familiar place, a classroom. But it wasn't just any classroom. It was their own, back on Earth. The young man looked around, his heart racing. "What's going on? How are we back here?" The woman shook her head. "This isn't real. It's some kind of illusion. The alien professor is testing us." The tall man adjusted his glasses, his face pale. "But why a classroom? What does this have to do with our greatest fear?" As if in response, the classroom began to change. The walls closed in, and the desks and chairs shifted, forming a maze-like structure. The air grew heavier, and the students felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The mechanical creature let out a low whine, its eyes glowing brighter. It seemed to sense their fear. The young man took a deep breath. "We need to stay calm. This is just a test. We can get through this." The woman nodded, though her hands were shaking. "But how? What are we supposed to do?" The alien professor's voice echoed again. "Face your fear," he said. "Only then can you overcome it." The students began to move through the maze, their steps cautious. The classroom seemed to stretch on endlessly, the walls shifting and changing as they walked. The timer on their wrists now showed only 15 seconds. As they turned a corner, they came face to face with a mirror-like wall. Reflected in it were not their own images, but scenes from their past, moments of failure, doubt, and fear. The tall man stared at his reflection, his face filled with anguish. This is my greatest fear," he whispered. "Failing. Letting everyone down." The woman looked at her reflection, her eyes welling with tears. "Mine too. I've always been afraid of not being good enough." The young man clenched his fists, his reflection showing a moment of deep regret. And mine is losing the people I care about. The mechanical creature let out a soft bark, as if urging them to move forward. The young man took a deep breath. We can't let fear control us. We have to face it. That's the only way we'll get out of here. The group stepped closer to the mirror-like wall, their reflections growing larger. The timer now showed only 10 seconds. As they reached out to touch the wall, it began to dissolve, revealing a bright light beyond. The alien professor's voice echoed one last time. You have faced your fear, he said. Now, step into the light. The students hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, the mechanical creature following close behind. The timer reached 0. The bright light enveloped the students, blinding them momentarily. When their vision cleared, they found themselves standing in a vast, open space. The alien environment was gone, replaced by a serene landscape bathed in soft, golden light. The mechanical creature stood beside them, its blue eyes glowing with a calm, reassuring energy. The students looked around, their hearts still racing from the ordeal they had just endured. The young man glanced at his wrist, where the timer had been. It was gone. Is it over? The tall man with glasses asked, his voice filled with disbelief. The woman with short hair took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the peaceful surroundings. I think so. But, what happens now? Before anyone could answer, the alien professor appeared before them. His shimmering silver form seemed almost gentle now, his glowing eyes filled with a quiet wisdom. You have completed the challenge, he said, his voice echoing softly in their minds. But the true test was not the shelter, nor the creature, nor the maze. It was your ability to face your fears and work together. The students exchanged glances, the weight of his words sinking in. The young man stepped forward. So, what was the point of all this? Why put us through something so intense? The alien professor's gaze softened. To teach you the value of unity, resilience, and self-discovery. In your world, you will face many challenges, some far greater than this. But if you remember what you have learned here, you will overcome them. The woman nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. It was never about the shelter. It was about us. Exactly, the alien professor replied. The shelter was merely a symbol. The real challenge was within you. The tall man adjusted his glasses, a small smile forming on his face. I guess we did better than we thought. The alien professor's form began to shimmer, as if he were fading away. Remember this experience, he said. And remember that you are stronger together than you are alone. As his form dissolved into the golden light, the students felt a sense of peace wash over them. The mechanical creature let out a soft whine, its eyes glowing brighter for a moment before it, too, began to fade. Wait, the young man called out, reaching toward the creature. But it was gone, leaving behind only a faint, glowing crystal. The woman picked up the crystal, holding it in her hand. I think this is for us, she said softly. A reminder of what we've been through. The tall man looked around, his expression thoughtful. So, what now? Do we go back? As if in response, a portal appeared before them, its surface shimmering like water. Beyond it, they could see their familiar world, the classroom, the streets, the people. The young man took a deep breath. I guess this is it. We're going back. The woman nodded, her grip tightening on the crystal. But we're not the same as we were before. We've changed. The tall man smiled. And that's a good thing. Together, the three students stepped through the portal, leaving the serene landscape behind. As they emerged on the other side, they found themselves standing in their classroom, exactly where they had been before the challenge began. Everything looked the same, but they knew they were different. The experience had left its mark on them, shaping them in ways they couldn't yet fully understand. The young man looked at the others, a determined glint in his eyes. We made it through. And whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The woman nodded, holding up the glowing crystal. And we'll always have this to remind us of what we're capable of. The tall man adjusted his glasses, a newfound confidence in his voice. Let's get to work. We've got a lot to do. As they left the classroom, the students felt a sense of purpose they had never known before. The alien professor's challenge had tested them in ways they could never have imagined, but it had also given them something invaluable, a deeper understanding of themselves and each other. The students stepped out of the classroom and into the bustling hallway of their school. The familiar sounds of chatter, lockers slamming, and footsteps echoed around them, but everything felt different. They carried the glowing crystal with them, a tangible reminder of their extraordinary experience. As they walked, the young man glanced at the crystal in the woman's hand. "Do you think anyone else will notice this?" he asked. The woman shook her head. "I don't think so. It feels like it's meant just for us." The tall man with glasses adjusted his bag, his expression thoughtful. "What do we even do with it? Keep it as a souvenir?" Before anyone could answer, the crystal began to glow brighter, and a faint hum filled the air. The students stopped in their tracks, their eyes widening as the alien professor's voice echoed in their minds once more. "You have returned to your world," he said, "but your journey is not yet complete." The young man looked around, but no one else seemed to notice the voice or the glowing crystal. "What does he mean?" he whispered. The woman held the crystal up, her eyes narrowing. "I think he's saying there's more to this. Maybe the crystal has a purpose." The tall man frowned. "Or maybe it's just a reminder of what we went through. Either way, we need to figure it out." As they continued walking, the crystal's glow began to pulse rhythmically, as if guiding them. It led them to an empty classroom at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and the students exchanged curious glances before stepping inside. The room was dimly lit, with sunlight streaming through the windows. In the center of the room stood a holographic projection of the alien professor, his shimmering form as imposing as ever. "Welcome back," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "You have proven yourselves worthy, but there is one final lesson you must learn." The students stared at him, their hearts racing. "What now?" the tall man asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "Haven't we been through enough?" The alien professor's glowing eyes focused on him. "The greatest challenges are not those that test your strength or intelligence, but those that test your character. You have faced fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Now, you must face the truth." The young man stepped forward, his expression determined. "What truth?" The alien professor's form shifted, and the room around them began to change. The walls dissolved, replaced by a vast, starry expanse. The students found themselves floating in space, surrounded by galaxies and nebulae. "The truth," the alien professor said, "is that your world is on the brink of a great change. The challenges you faced in my realm were a reflection of the challenges you will face in your own. The skills you have learned, teamwork, resilience, and self-discovery, will be crucial in the days to come." The woman's eyes widened. "What kind of change? What are you talking about?" The alien professor's gaze softened. "I cannot say more. The future is not fixed, and the choices you make will shape it. But know this, you are not alone. The crystal you hold is a symbol of your connection to each other and to the greater universe. Use it wisely." The tall man crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "This is starting to sound like a sci-fi movie. Are you saying we're supposed to save the world or something?" The alien professor's form began to fade, the starry expanse dissolving around them. "You are already saving it," he said. "Every choice, every action, every moment of courage, it all matters. Remember what you have learned, and trust in yourselves." As his voice faded, the students found themselves back in the empty classroom, the crystal in the woman's hand glowing softly. The young man let out a long breath. Well, that was intense. The woman looked down at the crystal, her expression thoughtful. He's right, though. We've been through something incredible, and it's changed us. Maybe we're meant to use what we've learned to make a difference. The tall man adjusted his glasses, a small smile forming on his face. Or maybe we're just overthinking it. Either way, I think we've earned a break. The young man chuckled, the tension easing from his shoulders. Agreed. But let's not forget what happened. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. The woman nodded, holding up the crystal. And we'll always have this to remind us of what we're capable of. As they left the classroom, the students felt a renewed sense of purpose. The alien professor's challenge had tested them in ways they could never have imagined, but it had also given them something invaluable. A deeper understanding of themselves, each other, and the world around them. The students left the classroom, the glowing crystal safely tucked away in the woman's bag. The school day continued as usual, but for the three of them, nothing felt the same. The experience with the alien professor had left an indelible mark on their lives, and they carried its lessons with them wherever they went. Over the following weeks, the students noticed subtle changes in themselves. The young man, once hesitant and unsure, began to take charge in group projects, his confidence growing with each passing day. The woman, who had always doubted her abilities, found herself speaking up more often, her ideas met with admiration and respect. Even the tall man, who had often been cynical and reserved, started to approach challenges with a newfound optimism. The crystal remained a constant reminder of their journey. It no longer glowed as brightly as it had before, but it still pulsed faintly, as if alive. The students kept it with them, passing it between themselves as a symbol of their bond. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, the three friends met at their favorite spot, a quiet park overlooking the city. They sat on a bench, the crystal resting between them. "Do you think we'll ever see him again?" the woman asked, her voice soft. The young man shook his head. "I don't know. But I think he's done what he came to do. He taught us what we needed to learn." The tall man leaned back, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "It's funny, isn't it? We went through all that, and now, life just goes on. But it feels different. Like we're seeing things in a new way." The woman smiled, picking up the crystal. "Maybe that's the point. He didn't just teach us how to survive in some alien world. He taught us how to live in this one." The young man nodded. "And how to face whatever comes our way. Together." As they sat in silence, the crystal began to glow brighter, its light spreading gently around them. The alien professor's voice echoed in their minds one last time, faint but clear. "You have learned the most important lesson of all," he said. "The strength to overcome any challenge lies within you. Trust in yourselves, and in each other. The future is yours to shape." The crystal's light faded, leaving behind a sense of peace and clarity. The students looked at each other, their bond stronger than ever. The young man stood, extending a hand to the others. "Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. Just like we did before." The woman took his hand, her smile warm. "And we'll remember what we've learned. No matter how hard things get, we'll find a way." The tall man stood as well, adjusting his glasses with a grin. "And if we ever need a reminder, we've got this." He held up the crystal, its faint glow reflecting in his eyes. As they walked away from the park, the city lights began to flicker on, illuminating the path ahead. The students knew that life would bring new challenges, but they were ready. They had faced the unknown, conquered their fears, and emerged stronger than ever. The alien professor's lessons would stay with them forever, a guiding light in the darkness, a reminder of the power of unity, resilience, and self-belief. And as they stepped into the future, they knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would face it together.